Have you ever had the experience of finally understanding the patterns in your family, and yet somehow you still find yourself repeating your same patterns? Maybe you've learned how to spot manipulation. You've recognized guilt patterns. You've started noticing when someone is trying to control the narrative or avoid accountability. And intellectually, you understand what's happening. But then you find yourself in a conversation with your parent, and suddenly you're nervously over explaining, or you feel that familiar wave of guilt, or you freeze and can't quite say what you wanted to say, or maybe you lash out and then feel really guilty about how you handled the situation. And afterward, you might think, why am I still doing this now that I have so much more insight into these patterns? And if you're stuck in this phase, it is incredibly frustrating. But know that this pattern recognition that you now have is one of the most powerful steps in getting to a place where you can eventually feel more confident in navigating these manipulative or emotionally complicated family dynamics. Many people spend years or even decades believing the story about themselves that was forced upon them, that they're too sensitive, too difficult, too dramatic, or that they're somehow responsible for all of the relational ruptures, conflict, and tension that occur in any relationship, which simply isn't true. So when you begin learning about manipulative tactics or complicated family roles and dynamics, it can be incredibly clarifying in terms of your own experiences. You start seeing patterns that once felt confusing, and that clarity matters. It's a really important step. But understanding these patterns, unfortunately, doesn't simultaneously undo the patterns. And it's really common to feel incredibly discouraged about that. The dynamics we experience in childhood, they don't just simply shape our beliefs. They shape how our nervous system and parts of our brain react to relationships. As children, we learn very quickly what keeps us safe and connected and what triggered disconnect, shame, punishment, or frequent and intense conflict. For example, if voicing your needs created conflict, you may have learned to suppress your needs, to disconnect from them. If someone else's big emotions frequently filled the room, you may have learned to monitor and adjust yourself to mold around the other person rather than connecting with yourself in those scary moments. If love and affection were inconsistent and conditional, we may have learned to work very hard to meet certain expectations in order to earn a fraction of the love that we needed and so craved. And these reactions make sense. They likely became your body's default in those situations. And over time, those reactions become deeply ingrained patterns within you. They don't only live in our thoughts, they live in our body and our instincts and the automatic ways we respond to certain people and certain situations. So when you find yourself reacting in a familiar way and you feel disappointed about that because intellectually you now understand your own patterns, it's not because you lack insight, but rather your body is responding in a way that has been ingrained in you for so many years, maybe even decades. It can be surprising for a lot of people how quickly our body returns to these familiar reactions when interacting with certain family members. Even if you've done lots of work in creating new patterns for yourself, and perhaps with relative success in other relationships in your life. But the moment you're around that certain parent, those familiar reactions can return in the blink of an eye. That's not a step backwards. It's your body recognizing a relational environment it has known for a long time to not be consistently safe. And our bodies are incredibly efficient at remembering relational patterns. Fortunately, these patterns don't disappear simply because we intellectually understand them. They can shift gradually as we create new experiences of safety, expression, clarity, self-trust, and compassion. And even though this awareness doesn't immediately erase any of these patterns, it does initiate an important shift. You begin to notice the moment when guilt starts to surface. You might notice when you start nervously over-explaining yourself. Or maybe you notice the urge to immediately be the fixer, somehow taking responsibility for someone else's actions or big feelings. And that moment of noticing is incredibly significant because noticing creates space. And that space is a key ingredient in the overall recipe of forming your own new patterns. In environments where manipulation or emotional chaos existed, many patterns developed over time. So it makes sense that shedding the old patterns and forming new ones also takes time. And real change often looks a lot less dramatic than we expect. It might look like noticing your own reaction a little sooner. It might look like pausing before responding. It might look like recognizing that someone else's big emotional reaction is not your responsibility. These small shifts may seem subtle, but they represent meaningful change. And know that this process is not linear. You may have moments where you feel incredibly clear and grounded and empowered, and then other moments where your old patterns appear again. Growth often happens in layers and seasons, and each layer brings a little more clarity, a little more choice, and a little more self-compassion. If you've been growing your understanding of manipulation or complicated family dynamics and still find yourself stuck at times, know that this is incredibly common and completely normal. It's part of the process of getting to a place where you feel more confident in navigating a relationship with your challenging parent. And understanding patterns is a really important step. But getting to this place of more confidence in navigating these difficult relationships also involves allowing your nervous system, your instincts, and your sense of safety to gradually adjust, which takes patience. So if you notice yourself slipping into these old patterns and you don't love it, perhaps you can meet that moment, and more importantly, yourself, with compassion and curiosity instead of judgment. You deserve relationships that feel safe and where your voice, your perspective, and your needs are honored. Sending you lots of love and care. You're so worth it.